well, when I was city administrator, so I guess that's over a decade ago. And we hired Crescendo. We went from a small Carnegie building, which is now Olney City Hall, bought an old grocery store, and it was a $1.2 million project. We hired Crescendo, and they raised the funds. I shouldn't say they raised the funds. They showed us how to raise the funds. And I'm a cynic by nature, and when, what's the gal's name? Ellen. When Ellen came in and suggested to me that, you know, they could raise it, I thought she was crazy, but she wasn't, I was. Anyways, the way they operate, what he's talking about is they do an initial survey. They come in and they interview some of the movers and shakers in town. Not necessarily the top dollar folks in town, it's more the most respected, well thought of, influential people in town. They may be wealthy, they may not be. And from there they determine A, you know, is there money to be raised in this town, and then B, are people willing to give it? And then they give you a summary report saying we feel comfortable how we could raise X. And I think they're batting 1,000 on their projects in terms of if they tell you they think they can get you there from here, I don't think they've ever fell short. The next step is going to be, and it's kind of costly to bring them on board, but they're going to take you through the actual formal campaign, and they get paid whether they're successful or not. Okay, so that's something you got to bear in mind. But I found their advice to be invaluable because left to our own devices, we'd be having hot dog sales and pancake breakfasts and raise $300 and not get there from here. So I thought maybe that would provide a little insight on how that works. Oh, and then I should say the pledges, once made, come in over a 3 to 5 year period. So having a loan with USDA that's prepayable at any time is a benefit, whereas if you did traditional bonds through me, we would have a period of time where you could not prepay. With them, if you were to accumulate that cash on the front end, you could go ahead and prepay that loan or a portion of it. And I think the history has shown you get about 95 to 98% of what's pledged. So it's not like you know, they pledge $1.5 million and then you only collect half of that. Usually the payment rate is pretty high. Okay, I'll stop. This thought might be helpful.
I have one other comment, if I may. When we talk about the grant money being obligated, we have to obligate the grant money and the loan money together. So I'm not saying you have to have your loan resolution signed to be in a position to start construction when we obligate the money, but it is obligated as one obligation. So if you want the grant money, the loan money is obligated at the same time. So just so you're aware of that.
How much has Crescendo, or the city paid Crescendo to this point?
I'm guessing we've probably spent $45,000. Would that be?
A little bit more, I think. We spent about the same as with that.
The library group has allocated, you know, been saving for this day for a long time and has been moving in that direction. So they've tried to do everything that we've asked them to do in terms of they know up front they're not going to be paid for strictly out of the city levies or LGA or anything like that. It was always going to require the private sector to step forward. And that was the challenge they were willing to take, and that's where we've been. But obviously, anything we can do when we learned of resources like the USDA and the fact that libraries are at the top of their level of importance of things to do in America, it's pretty difficult not to want to find a way to incorporate that and see if we can be successful at utilizing it in terms of the project. And that's really what this is all, what we're trying to do. Jennifer knows that. We're not, we've been very clear with her that, you know, our hope would be that within 1 or 2 years that loan would be gone. And as I said before, when she said, and you get to keep all of the grant, that's the kind of thing you like to hear.
I have another question for Jennifer. Did you say that the June 11, 2011 is when this has to be all settled?
September 30th of 2010 is when the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds are pulled.
But as to construction and all that, is there any time frame or
No.
limitation?
Well, funds have to be used within 5 years of obligation. So if we obligate money this month, 5 years from now, the money has to be depleted or it gets returned to the treasury.
I think you're thinking about the deed, June 2011, as far as
Right.
tear down.
The brownfield grant, you would have to pay back the $250,000 of the grant that you received to do the site development. We are including that as part of the project expense when we're looking at it, because that gives us some leveraging for funding, but, if you don't develop that site, as far as I understand, for public use, by June of next year, you would have to return the $250,000.
Skating rink doesn't apply? I saw Mr. Public out there.
It's actually 3098 is the number that we returned.
309,000.
3098, it was the full grant, and I know this will get quoted somehow wrong, but I'll say it anyway. The grant was envisioned to access all the property on that quarter of a block, including those properties that are not currently under control. Sometimes, when you're doing a project, people have a change of attitude, they have a change of what they expect out of something, and the other side needs to react to that. In this particular case, the library group has been able to develop a plan that's still doable. Is it the most ideal as when we started? No. Could it still be ideal? Yes. Will we still pursue to the nth degree those other properties? Absolutely. But at the same time, the public has only so much to give. And the public should not spend more than it's supposed to spend. And so we will watch that very carefully, and any properties we get will be within the bounds of what is reasonable. And it has to be. So our hope is we're able to do even better, that we're able to access parking and have better parking resources for everyone. But at this point, given this day and where we're at, this is where we're at. And that's what we've been able to accomplish. But there's more to be done. We need to raise the money. We need to find out from the USDA whether the grant is indeed doable, because Jennifer is here only as a resource, and it's not her decision. Certainly we will prevail upon her to defend this to the max. We have work to do with Val to work on the design of the building. Maybe there's other things we still haven't found that we can agree are doable and workable. And in having worked with them and get the group together, new ideas come out all the time. And so we've been able to manufacture things that I think are good. Tonight, all we need is we need to find out whether the USDA part is in play so that we can challenge the library group. Here's your challenge. And if there's any other grants that come in the interim, that'll make it a smaller challenge. But at least they'll know what's the next step. And I think we owe it to them, as far as they've taken us to this point, to now take this to the final conclusion.
Jennifer,
Yes, sir.
when can the city expect an answer?
I am prepared to have you the request for obligation tomorrow if the city wants to move forward. I need the mayor's signature for the request for obligation, and it can be submitted. The file has already been reviewed and
Approved?
well, it won't be approved until the request of obligation is signed by the city. We don't have anything, we don't have a formal request from you saying you want this much money. I've done all the
Preliminary?
underwriting, it's all complete. The file's been reviewed by the state office. The funding has been kind of earmarked. We're ready to go. We just need to know that this is the loan and the grant that you want to pursue. You sign your mayor will sign the request for obligation, and then your funds can be obligated. Personally, if we can obligate it before Thursday of this week, and I'm not trying to sway the council at all, but the interest rate changes April 1st.